Hi, I'm Ali Zendrian, Editor-in-Chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I uncover news gems that might not have gotten their full chance to sparkle, and I dust them off a little bit. I'm joined by my trusted co-host and personal financial advisor, Brandon Galisi of Galisi Financial. Brandon, how's your week been?
Week's been pretty good. We were talking before the podcast, spending some time at my mother-in-law's house because our flooring is getting totally redone, had a dishwasher leak. I think I might have mentioned on the last podcast, but it's almost wrapped up at this point. So looking forward to kind of getting back into the normal groove, because even though we're blessed and we can record these from anywhere, like you were a couple of weeks ago in a hotel room, it's always nice to be back at your own desk, your home office, your setup, and all those things. But overall, it's been a solid week. But how's your week been, Ali?
I totally hear that about just being at your own desk. Actually, sadly, the new golden doodle, Pluto, apparently doesn't like me being at my desk. He prefers me working at the dining room table, which is quite frustrating. But apparently at not even 10 pounds, he is the boss. So what are you going to do?
Fair. Gonna have to somehow get him into the home office more. I don't know if that's a bed, if that's some toys or some treats or something. Maybe, because at least at my home office, Perlo will always follow me. And in fact, even in the guest bedroom here at my mother-in-law, she's just down and off screen here. So.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has tricks on that. So our first piece of news this week is related to International Women's Day. Coursera reported that between 2024 and 2025, female enrollees in their GenAI courses rose from 32% to 36%, so a 4% increase. It showed a breakdown geographically and along gender lines, which showed that Latin American countries have doubled their female GenAI learner enrollments, particularly with Peru doing very well. They had a 14.5% percentage point increase. Mexico also did well, as did Colombia. As far as Asia Pacific nations, they also did relatively well. Uzbekistan in particular had an 8.8% increase in their enrollments. And then among the Anglophiles and just generally economically developed countries that didn't do so great. In the United States, there was a negative percentage, so we're losing female learners. Same thing with Canada, same thing with the UK, basically in order of least to worst offenders in that case, Spain being the worst that they listed. It made me think, first of all, what we can do to get more women to sign up, but it also pointed out that women are more likely to finish a course that they actually sign up for. So one would think, don't we want women to do it? Because at least we'll do the whole dang thing.
Right. I saw that stat. That was what jumped out to me too, that the women that did enroll were more likely to finish. It would also be interesting to see too, because at least from my understanding, and I can't recall exactly where this data point was from, but it's a relatively small percentage of people that complete any sort of course, not just necessarily on the Coursera platform. I mean, even numbers that I recall seeing, so someone can fact check me, but it's only something like 3% actually finish a course, or it's some pretty low numbers. So it would be interesting to know, because there's multiple ways to learn. Like personally, I haven't taken a Gen AI course. I don't believe that you have, but we both use AI, and I have conversations with fellow financial planners. And if I don't know how to do something, I might even ask the AI to teach me how to use the thing. So I think there's just different ways of learning. So I would be interested to see if they were to simply ask both men and women even, hey, are you learning about Gen AI? Just to see, and I would hope that number would be increasing, even if maybe the medium isn't directly through an official course. But again, that's all speculation, and I don't have any of that data.
But you're right. So it does speak to not necessarily that the learning's not occurring, but that it's just not within this one particular way. And that does make sense. So when you think about it, I mean, so for instance, I teach at a college, there's attendance, and if you don't show up on XYZ amount of time, it's a percentage of your grade and whatnot. There are consequences to it. But with more of these like online classes, like, is that built into it where if you don't finish, does anything bad happen to you? Is it just that you don't get the certificate at the end? So maybe it is just the way that we're either creating our educational content, or if it's just, like you said, the way that people learn.
Right. And I think there's tons of psychology when it comes to this too, even when it's completing a course where, again, you're at an actual college, things are a little bit different. You end up getting a degree at the very end, and that degree can be quite meaningful versus even some certifications in, we'll say, the financial services industry, taking aside, of course, the big ones like CFP board. That's obviously a huge one, but there's all sorts of other much smaller ones that you can go through, get the course and put some letters after the name, but it doesn't necessarily help from a marketing perspective. So the desire to maybe finish certain things might not be as high. Whereas again, in your class, one, you even have attendance. So if you're not showing up at all, you're going to impact your grade. Or if you just quit halfway through, you're going to have an effort, you're going to fail a course. That, like, to your point, the stakes are a bit higher than if you just go and buy an online e-learning course, even if there's a certificate at the end, again, unless your employer is requiring you to do that, or there's another reason that you're going through it because you truly want to learn. I think the stakes maybe are just a bit different. So I think that's a great point you bring up.
Yeah. Very good point. Our second piece of news is that Ethic launched its video series Work Ethic, which is hosted by its CEO, Doug Scott, who is inviting founders, innovators, and CEOs to have open and honest conversations about what it's like building and sustaining strong firms, and particularly in an industry that's constantly being disrupted. So I thought that this was really interesting, and I would hope what comes from this, I mean, the two of us, like, obviously building and sustaining a strong firm, like, we're largely solopreneurs. So I don't know that I can say strong firm in this case, but there is something about once you become that business owner that everything just changes on its head, and there's so much learning that has to go into it. And it seems like there's not a lot of that real talk kind of advice that people get. So hopefully people will get a lot from that, but I would love to know what you thought of that.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting pieces of the article that jumped out to me was they specifically said that the wealth management industry is expected to grow from roughly 140 trillion to 200 trillion by 2030. And so we talk a lot about AI on this podcast, and different reports saying that financial advisors are going to be gone. Other reports saying it's not necessarily an impact at all. But at least seeing this, the pie is getting bigger. So even if AI takes a slice of the pie keeps growing, or is expected to grow, which I'm not terribly surprised about. Now the numbers are pretty large. Once we start talking in the trillions, it's nearly unfathomable to even wrap our minds around. But I thought that was encouraging, and almost says, hey, AI is not just going to replace a bunch of people in a growing industry. And in fact, I would guess that AI is helping grow that pie.
Yeah, exactly. You would think. And to your point, so right, if the pie keeps growing, yes. If a sliver comes out, please, we probably needed it.
Exactly. Again, we talk about the accessibility of financial advice. I mean, again, that's one area that might be growing with AI, where maybe, again, as the stakes are lower, someone gets access to more of a robo-advisor, maybe investment solution, but then also a much more tailored, compliant financial advisor AI that, again, whenever the stakes are lower, like, hey, should I contribute to a Roth IRA this year? I don't know all the details of that person's situation, but probably it's typically not a bad idea, at least, to contribute to something like a Roth. Or maybe it would ask a couple other questions. Do you have an emergency fund? Do you have this in place? What's your match at work? Where it might be able to ask a few things back and forth. But again, once we start getting into larger stakes, bigger dollars, I think that's when the professional comes in. But again, yeah, encouraged that the pie is at least expected to be growing.
Yes. Our next piece of news is a recent survey from HomeServe, which showed that there's a high awareness that mortgage rates have dropped from their recent very high highs. But what was interesting to me, at least, was 26% of Americans basically don't really care what the rates are because they're not interested in buying a house because it's just too darn expensive. So it was interesting getting that perspective of, I don't really care if it's 7%, if it's 2%, if the house is still $1 million, does it really matter to me? Is that just a poor way of thinking about it, or is that really an issue? What do you think?
I don't think it's a poor way of thinking about it. And in fact, I'm not even terribly surprised by it, especially because we're seeing rates gradually trend down. Again, if it went from 6% to back to 3% overnight, I think you'd have maybe a little bit more of a spike, but it's not like it's a massive decline in a super short period of time. And also, Ali, you bring up the great points as well about houses are still expensive. I mean, let's say that, okay, your interest rate is lower, all things held equal. That means that your mortgage payment is going to be less on a monthly basis. But again, you've bought a house before, you still have to have money for the down payment, at least even if you're putting 3.5% down on that $1 million house, there's still $30K out the door for just the down payment. And then the title fees, closing costs, all those other things, new furniture for your new house, because maybe coming from your apartment, you want to get furniture that fits the new space, and the space might be bigger. So you need more furniture. Again, anyone who's bought a house is just nodding along and agreeing here because it's just a down payment. That's definitely not the case. So you still do have to have substantial cash to be able to buy a house. Even if rates went back to 3%, you still have to come up with the down payment and those closing costs. So that's why I'm not as surprised that the gradual kind of the trending down that we're having, still 26% are like, I'm not even concerned.
That did remind me though, so I'm sure you felt somewhat similarly, at least when you do sit down at the table and you sign your papers, or I don't know, I presume at this point you could even just DocuSign them because this shows how old I am and when I bought a house. Transferring that money over and just feeling like I never even like saw this much money in my hands, and yet it just, here you go, just take all of it.
Honestly, no, Amanda and I bought our house in August of 21, and there was a notary that came directly to the kitchen table, and we wet ink signed everything. So there might have been a few things that were DocuSign, but at least the kind of the final closing we did sign with wet ink. So I'd like to think there's an e-sign solution these days, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, but then, so in your case, did you guys, was it just like a bank transfer, or did you have to have like the check? Or I remember writing out that check and being like, oh dear Lord.
That's a good question. Oh, I can't remember if it was a check or it was like a cashier's check. We definitely didn't have to actually write the check. If anything, it would have been a cashier's check where you just ask the bank. And again, I know it's the ultimate result ends up being the same, but psychologically it does seem different, where if you actually wrote the check, wrote how much money that you were giving, for whatever reason, that feels more painful, if you will, than even if it's the same dollar amount. If the bank just hands you that piece of paper that is the check pre-printed, then it feels more like that transfer, and we are almost more disassociated with the money compared to, again, you physically wrote down with ink, here's how much money is coming out of my account.
Well, I'm sure kind of similar with credit cards and cash. And credit cards, theoretically, I know like, oh, my account's been $250 for XYZ. But if I handed you the cash, I can feel that $250 leaving. The other one, like, I mean, it's going to come out of my bank account at some point. I know it happens, but it doesn't feel the same.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think very similar from a psychological perspective. Yeah, I don't think there was too much else in the article. I mean, it did say 59% feel more positive about the overall housing market with lower rates. Was there anything else about that, or any other thing in the article that jumped out to you?
I think, yeah, it was nice seeing that mix of like that housing market. We do overall feel good about it. We're just not buying right now. So I guess that to your point says like whether the people surveyed are just at that point in their lives that I could buy a house if I wanted to. I don't really have to, nor do I want to, or what. But yeah, it was interesting seeing the duality there.
Yeah. Again, I think as we continue to trend lower, at some point home buying I would presume would pick up, but then we could end up having this inverse relationship where rates start to trend lower, but then housing prices go the opposite direction. Housing prices go up as more buyers enter the market. And there still are, I can't remember the number from the article, but a good amount of folks, I mean, this would be yourself and I included, that have pretty solid, pretty low interest rates that it would be, I mean, even to buy the same houses that we both live in today would be more expensive than when we got them in a much lower interest rate environment. So there still, I think, is going to be some hesitation from buyers because they can't just, I'm going to upgrade now. Like your house might have gone up, but your mortgage payment may be the same or a little bit more if you were to try to sell and buy something new.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. So the last piece of news is ending on a fluffier note. I saw this and kind of gave myself a little bit of a chuckle. So VistaPrint announced its new generative AI logo maker, which can create this important branding tool in minutes. So Brandon, I don't know about you, but if anybody's seen the logo for AtoZ Communications, you will quite honestly notice that it's an A and a Z smushed together because A, I have no design skills like that. And B, at least when I did it, I was thinking of, I used to write when I was like editing the newspaper or things like that, you would have to put your initials. And so my initials were there. It kind of reminded me of that. Seeing something like this, I'm like, gosh, maybe I should redo my logo. How did you come about with your graphics and whatnot?
The initial graphics were just pretty boring. It was just Galisi Financial it was mainly text, but the new one that I am wearing for those that are watching our show today, I got that from the person who's helping me redesign my website. So he had kind of asked a few questions. Now, obviously the Galisi Financial aspect is still the exact same, but then there's more of that mountain type chart with my brand colors and something pointing upwards. Yeah, I also don't have the talent to create my own logo either. So I did outsource that.
Well, at least you were smart enough to do so. So good job to you.
Fair. Well, prior to that, I just had the text, like I said. But I will say, Amanda, my wife, she used for actually her Galicia Financial swag Yeti. They
Ooh.
also had an AI. Like, I don't know if it was considered a logo generator, but it was an image generator. And since she has a horse, she wanted to see what the AI image generator could do, and it ended up coming out with a pretty cool picture or image of a horse and someone riding a horse with a
Aw.
cowboy hat on and everything, and it ended up looking pretty cool. So she's got, on one side of her, she's got the Galicia Financial logo, and then on the opposite side, she's got this AI generated image that, again, you wouldn't know is AI. It did a pretty good job.
Well, way to go, Amanda.
Yeah, so I've seen AI generate the image like that, and yeah, it turned out pretty well.
Very nice. Well, so finally, for anybody who's going to Future Proof Citywide in Miami next week, I will be there. Please say hi. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Also, just to tease you guys for next week, so the newest AtoZ communications client, Slant, will be announcing some cool news from Future Proof Citywide. So you got to hear it here. Just saying. But thank you as always for going on these tangents and especially talking about our logos today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this was fun as always. Safe travels to Miami. I'm sure you're also looking forward to that Florida sun, getting out of maybe the snow that has been New York in the last several weekends. So I'm sure that's going to be an amazing trip. You're going to connect with awesome folks as well. And yeah, looking forward to hearing that news next week when we chat as well.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to sharing it.